Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to another segment of Voices of Empowerment with Dr. B. I am your girl, Dr. Bianca Miss B. Lee. I am an LPC. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm also a cognitive behavioral therapist. I'm a spiritual teacher. I am a doula. I am a guide, a help, a mentor, coach, all of the things. But today, I am here to journey through to you with this amazing book that we are reading. We've been cruising through, okay? Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent, written by Isabel Wilkerson. This book has been very, very brutally honest, and I'm grateful for it, okay? Because not often enough do we get the truth. I'm going to say that again. Not often enough do we get the truth of a matter, okay? In fact, our truth for ages has been erased, it's been deleted, it's been rewritten, it's been uh, phased out, diminished, dismissed, um, downgraded, narratives have been changed. But in this book is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, even if it's hard to digest. And that it has been on several occasions, but it's what we need to know in order to identify where we are going or even how to get there. We have to first identify where we are and where we have been. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We have to be able to gauge our forward movement. We have to be able to gauge our forward movement. How do we do that? We do that by keeping track of what was, what is, and then as we're pursuing towards what's going to be. And I'm grateful to authors like Isabel Wilkerson. There was a movie depiction of this book. It's called Origins. I do suggest that you all watch that movie as well. Usually, the book is always better than a movie depiction. In this case, because this book was not written to be a movie, the movie adds to the context. It gives a visual aid to the written message. Okay, so yeah, so I suggest you do both because they will complement. They have complemented one another. All right. So, as you all know, we meet every Tuesday and Sunday here on live. It's on several platforms. We're on Clubhouse, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of the places. Okay, and I thank you all for being here. Those who are here in present, those who will be here in the future, those who are listening via replay. I thank you for your presence. Whenever you do get it, I pray that it is the perfect time that you are hearing it. Okay. But I'm just grateful that you're hearing it. All right. So whether I'm here in the present or even beyond my transition, I'm grateful that these avenues are here so that the voice and the message carries on, whether I'm here to do so or not. So I'm much grateful to the Most High for those opportunities. Okay. Without further ado, today we are coursing through part four. We're beginning part four, which is entitled "The Tentacles of Caste," and we will be reading through Brown Eyes versus Blue Eyes and chapter 10, which is entitled "Central Miscasting." Okay. All right. Again, part four, "The Tentacles of Caste," and we're going to begin with Brown Eyes versus Blue Eyes. At any point that you hear something that resonates with you, stands out to you, or things like that, feel free, by all means, utilize the comment section, utilize the chat. Your voice is important to us here at Voices of Empowerment. And I will give voice and sound to your words. All right. You can utilize the chat on Clubhouse, wherever you are watching from, or the comments on any other video airing platform. Okay. We are both audible and video. Okay. Alrighty, here we go. Without further ado, this is entitled Brown Eyes versus Blue Eyes, from an excerpt from Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent. The third graders fidgeted in their seats and rested their chins on their folded forearms as their teacher, Mrs. Elliott, told them the rules of a class experiment she wanted to try with them. This was in the farm town of Riceville, Iowa, in the late 1960s. And all of the children, the descendants of immigrants from Germany and Scotland and Ireland and Scandinavia, had roughly the same skin color as their teacher, and from afar, little by which to distinguish one from another. But after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. and the turmoil that followed beyond the cornfields that surrounded them, Jane Elliott decided she needed to do something out of the ordinary to teach her dominant caste students how it felt to be judged on the basis of an arbitrary physical trait, the color of their eyes. She announced to the children that they would do things differently that day. She laid out arbitrary stereotypes for a neutral trait that for now in her classroom would put a student with that trait in essentially the lowest caste. She told the children with brown-eyed people that brown-eyed people are not as good as blue-eyed people, that they are slower than blue-eyed people, not as smart as blue-eyed people, that until she said otherwise, the brown-eyed students would not be allowed to drink from the water fountain, that they had to use paper cups instead. She told the children that the brown-eyed people would not play with the blue-eyed people on the playground and would have to come in early, but that the blue-eyed students would get to stay out longer for recess. The students looked confused at first. Then, in a matter of minutes, a caste hierarchy formed. It started as soon as the teacher told the children to open their books to a certain page to begin their lesson. "Everyone ready?" Mrs. Elliott asked the class. One little girl was still turning the pages in her book to get to the right page. The teacher looked at the girl, her eyes judging and impatient. "Everyone but Lori," Mrs. Elliott said with exacerbation. "Ready, Lori?" A blue-eyed boy interjected. "She's a brown-eyed," he said, having caught on instantly to the significance of what had never mattered for as long as he had known this girl. When lunchtime approached, the teacher told the blue-eyed children that they would get to eat first and would be permitted a second helping, but the brown-eyed children weren't allowed to. They might take too much time, the teacher told them. The brown-eyed children looked downcast and defeated. One boy got into a fight at recess because one of the blue-eyed boys had called him a name. "What did he call you?" the teacher asked him. "Brown eyes," the boy said, tears at the surface of those eyes. An otherwise neutral trait had been converted into a disability. The teacher later switched roles, and the blue-eyed children became the scapegoat caste, with the same caste behavior that had arisen the day before between these artificially constructed upper and lower caste. "Seems when we were down on the bottom, everything bad was happening to us," one girl said. "The way you're treated, you felt like you didn't want to try to do anything," said another. Classroom performance fell for both groups of students during the few hours that they were relegated to the subordinate caste. The brown-eyed students took twice as long to finish a phonics exercise the day that they were made to feel inferior. "I watched my students become what I told them they were," she told NBC News decades later. When the brown-eyed children were put on a pedestal and made dominant, Elliott told the network she saw little wonderful brown-eyed white people become vicious, ugly, nasty, discriminating, domineering people in the space of 15 minutes. With the blue-eyed children scapegoated and subordinated, I watched brilliant blue-eyed, white Christian children become timid and frightened and angry and unable to learn in the space of 15 minutes, she said. "If you do that with a whole group of people for a lifetime," she said, "you change them psychologically. You convince those who are analogous to the brown-eyed people that they are superior, that they are perfect, that they have the right to rule, and you convince those who take the place of the blue-eyed students that they are less than. If you do that for a lifetime, What do you suppose that does to them? Yeah, I remember watching that study. I remember listening to her interview, and it was powerful. It was powerful to say the least. Chapter 10, Central Miscasting. I arrived in London on a slate gray morning in December 2017 for a major conference on the topic that had begun to consume my waking hours: caste. Unlike many events I attend, I was going there to listen, to gain a greater understanding of that which I did not know rather than to speak myself. I would be surrounded by people who studied what seemed to be the missing codes to human ruptures. The issue of caste was, to my mind, the basis of every other ism. These researchers were now my intellectual tribe. These were people who could see past the hierarchies and false divisions that undermined the species. The auditorium was packed with sociologists, political scientists, anthropologists, graduate students, and I could barely contain myself as I took a seat in the front. A woman who appeared to be of East Asian descent removed her jacket and nodded. There was no flinching or scooting away. There were no quizzical side eyes, as much as might happen in the similar setting in the States. I was feeling better already. I took a measure of the crowd and noticed that here at the crossroads of the world, there was no one else at the conference who looked like me. Most everyone appeared to be descended from South Asia, meaning India, or from Europe, primarily the UK. Not one person of African descent. From what I could tell, only 2 or 3 Americans, all of them white and based in Europe or India. I alone had crossed the Atlantic for this single day of attempting to understand the forces that had shaped the course of my life and those of my ancestors and of many other people before me. While I had studied the unspoken caste structure in the United States, I had not yet spent time on the original caste system of India. As with many conversations about injustice, the talks turned almost exclusively on the victims and consequences of societal ills rather than on their origins. Panel after panel looked through a different lens at the suffering of the lowest caste, which in India had been called the scheduled castes, or, shocking to American ears, the backward caste. I began to see parallels with America, heard stories that could have been taken from the headlines of the United States from African Americans and indigenous people. Both countries had abolished legal discrimination, and yet, according to the panels and keynotes, Dalits were being brutalized by Indian authorities, as African Americans were being brutalized by police in the United States. And the people known as the Adivasi were fighting to retain their lands and culture in India, as have the indigenous people in America. 2 different countries, oceans apart, had found parallel ways to contain the subordinate groups within them. I could close my eyes, change the names as I listened to these reports, and feel that I was back in the United States. Another Dalit murdered by police, another Adivasi murdered by the police. A woman said, "Why do we not face up to the outrage of state-sanctioned violence?" At the first break, I was anxious to get a copy of the papers the scholars had read that morning. I had decided early on that I was not going to lean on any recognition that might accrue to me from my first book. In fact, I purposely kept a quiet profile as to not attract attention to this new project that was then still germinating in my head. I was there on the strength of my own personal presentation, there to be accepted for what people could see: a well-dressed woman, an American, an African American, well-spoken and focused. I went up to a professor, an Indian woman, an upper caste woman, as I could come to realize, who seemed to be in charge. I asked if I might get a copy of the papers that were presented. Would they be made available? She said no. You'll have to wait. Why do you need a copy? I'm a writer, and I have come all the way from America just for this, I told her. I thought that this level of dedication might impress her. It did not. She directed me to an Englishman who was her senior, and it seemed that even here, among people who study caste, there might be traditional hierarchy at work. The woman was then pulled away by the press of people, and the Englishman was swamped as well. As in any human grouping, there were cliques and fraternities of people who had known one another or worked together, and rather than an open conference, this was starting to feel like a family reunion to which I had been admitted by accident. At the lunch break, I spotted a gentleman who was sitting alone, across from other men who were talking to one another. He was Indian, like three-quarters of the attendees, but he was different. He was carrying a black briefcase, all business and purposeful amid the backpacks surrounding us. Like me, he seemed an outsider among insiders. I felt an immediate kinship. His name, he told me as I took a seat next to him, was Tushar. He was born in Bengal and was a geologist, now living in Germany. Living in London. My apologies. I lost my track. He was more formally dressed than everyone else. Blue Oxford shirt collar peeking above his gray tweed jacket, a side part in his thick gray hair, his eyes smiling in quarter moons on his warm, kind face as he talked. According to the caste system, he says, as if informing me of the status of someone he once knew, I belong to the second upper caste, the warrior soldier caste. I looked at this man who was not much taller than I, small boned, narrow shouldered, gentle of face, self effacingly modest in bearing, and wondered on what planet would this man be seen as a natural born warrior. Here was living proof of the miscasting of caste. This had long ago registered to him as well. He then took the caste ascription with so little solemnity, that he was not at first able to give the exact spelling of the caste, or in Sanskrit, the Varna to which he was born. I did not yet know the four Varnas at the time, or that castes were even called Varnas. So I asked him to write it down for me. He wrote the words Kshatriya and then Kayastras in my notepad. I think it is Kshatriya, he said, as if to disregard his insignificance by misremembering how to spell or pronounce it. It's an issue not well understood. I was raised with social privilege. You are told you are second upper caste, the ruling caste, and that you are to be happy that there are many below you. But as a young boy on the way to school, he passed the beggars on the streets asking for money and people crying out that they had no food. His own family sat down to meals with 4 and 5 courses, mutton and chutney, dal and amaranth, while less well-off families subsisted on rice and potatoes, and those beneath them on even less. It was hard to enjoy one's privilege when so few people had it. When he was 11 or 12, he began asking why his family had so much and others so little. Don't discuss about these things, the elders told him. Do your studies. Caste is created by God. Wow. The afternoon sessions were about to begin, discussions of Dalit protests and corporate encroachment on the land of Adivasis. Tushar and I headed back to the auditorium, each of us on our respective missions. As this was England, there was a break for tea, and I gravitated to Tushar again in the crowd. He looked forlorn and impatient now. They haven't answered my questions, he said. All my life, I've lived with this. I'm looking for answers about how this began. I will stay to hear more. He asked me why I had come all the way from America for this conference. I told him I wanted to understand caste because I lived with it too. I told him most people don't think of America as having a caste system, but it has all the hallmarks of one. He listened and did not judge. Caste defines everything in India, he said. It is the Hindu religion that maintains the caste system. That is why Ambedkar became the Buddhist. It was not an escape for him. It was a liberation. Casteism is another form of racism. God knows how long it will take for people to let it go. I'm wondering then, are you still a Hindu? I asked him. I am atheist, he said. No religion since I was 13. What does your family think about that? They think you are born a Hindu, you die a Hindu. You do not escape caste. But I believe what I believe. Who cares what they think? He appeared to have given some consideration to what I told him about the hierarchy in America. It had puzzled him and intrigued him. If you have caste in the US, he asked me, where are you in the caste system? That is the question that many Indians ask, in one form or another, upon meeting a fellow Indian. It is a line of inquiry that those in the lowest caste know is coming and that they dread. Indians will ask the surname, the occupation of one's father, the village one is from, the section of the village that one is from, the sus out of the caste of whoever is in front of them. They will not rest until they have uncovered the person's rank in the social order. Wow. That actually explains why some Indian natives who are now in America treat Americans a certain type of way. I never knew this. It never really paralleled until now. Wow. That matters to them. It matters to how they treat you. It matters. She stated here, they will not rest until they have uncovered the person's rank in the social order. Wow. Tushar had waited quite some time to ask me this and would not likely have done so or thought of it at all if I hadn't mentioned caste in America. The idea seemed as wonderment to him. He seemed to want to know how things worked and where I fit into what to him was an alien hierarchy. I had not expected this question. Nobody had ever asked me before. How could he not know? Was he merely being polite? Hollywood and the news media have exported demeaning images of African Americans for generations, which means our reputation often precedes us, and not for the better. So I was, in fact, strangely grateful for his giving me an option. Even without the language of caste, most any American could know the ranking of the group to which I was born. But here was a man born upper caste in India and a skeptic of inherited status, seeing me as an individual who might be of any rank. He was not putting me in a box, nor making the assumptions that I labor under every day. His question was liberating in its most innocent lack of judgment. Yet it brought to mind Dr. King's epiphany nearly 60 years before in India. Well, I told Tushar, in America, I am assigned to the lowest caste, the American untouchables. I am an American Dalit, and I am living proof that caste is artificial. He gave me a look of recognition. My answer was further confirmation of what he considered a disease. We would have other conversations in the following months whenever I visited London. He would share more of the absurdities he had witnessed in the caste system back home. He remembered the Dalit students whose exams went ungraded. The tests were not even marked, he said, because the teacher was upper caste and would not touch the paper touched by a Dalit. So you laugh or you cry. He told me about the upper caste woman in an office where he once worked. She would get up from her desk and walk the length of the office, down the hall and around the corner to ask a Dalit to get her water. My goodness. The jug was there next to her desk, he said. The Dalit had to come to where she was sitting and pour it for her. It was beneath her dignity to get the water herself from the desk beside her. This is the sickness of the caste. He recalled the heartbreak of the Indian fixation on skin color, which was caste within caste. That's what we have, color, what is it? Colorism, yes. Who tend to be lower caste, but not always, and how they suffer from this accident of faith, as do African Americans and other people of color in the United States, in other parts of the world. His older sister happened to be darker than most of his siblings, and when she reached courting age, she was told she would have to boil milk and skim the skin from the boiled milk and spread it on her face prior to sleep every night before the young men came to interview her for marriage. Wow. Imagine, he said, week after week, night after night, she knew she would be rejected, and she would close the door to her room and cry. I was 12. I remember to this day. She got married, but that's not the point. She should not have to go through all of this, the cruelty of it. We had both been miscast, each in our own way, and could see through the delusion that had shaped and restricted us from the other side of our respective caste systems. We had broken through the matrix and were convinced that we could see what others could not, and that others could see it too, if they could awaken from their slumber. We had defied our caste assignments. He was not a warrior or a ruler. He was a geologist. I was not a domestic. I was an author. He had defied his caste from on high and I from below. And we had met at this point in London at our own Maginot line of equality, standing on different sides of the same quest to understand the forces that had sought to define us but had failed. That's good. That is good. The next chapter is chapter 11, which we will not go into. We will do that on Tuesday. Chapter 11 is entitled Dominant Group Status Threat and the Precarity of the Highest Rung. Dominant Group Status Threat and the Precarity of the highest rung. This is something, y'all. This is something. And like I stated, man, we got to go through this hard journey here, this hard walk, in order to truly see where the disease began. This is really something. Because technically, none of us deserve any of the treatment that we have received. None of our ancestors deserved it. Nobody did. Nobody in any country, in any culture, nobody deserves mistreatment based on things that we had no control over. Not in this life. I can go other places, with that topic in and of itself. However, most are not ready to hear and or accept that conversation. So I'll leave it here, not in this life. Okay. But still in all, this is a hard walk that we have to take, and I'm willing to take it, man. I want to know. I'm just as intrigued about the story as I am about my story, because it's one and the same. It's one and the same. I thank you all so very much. If you have any questions or if you want to receive the book, feel free to reach out to me. It is free of charge to you. The book is Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent, written by Isabel Wilkerson. If you want this book or any other book that we've read collectively, it is free of charge to you. Yes, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And yes, we do accept donations. Yes, they are welcome. However, they are not required in order to get the reading material that we collectively go through each and every week, okay? That is for you. There's a PDF ebook copy, so you can have it. I will personally email it to you. You just have to reach out to me and let me know that you want it, and let me know the email address at which you want me to forward the book, okay? Alrighty, you all. With that being said, that concludes today's session. It was a quick one. I'm glad about it, because I want you to, I don't like to keep you all for long. I want you to hear a message, and then I want you to kind of sit with it and process it on your own or with your people. I want it to stir conversation. I want it to be very provocative so that it can cause a stir. We should never be comfortable with this stuff going on. And unfortunately, we have as a whole. But we also have as sub-holes, okay? We have. And so, in order for us to heal, we have to reveal. Okay? Well, until Tuesday, I thank you for being here. I love you. I mean it. There is absolutely positively nothing you can do about it. Don't you even try it. We'll see you back here on Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Voices of Empowerment with Dr. B. Peace.